Hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, how are you?
All right. How are you doing?
Oh my goodness. So do you go by Charles? I need to know that first.
Just like in the movie.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, I got to tell you, this is so much fun for me because I got to tell you, I'm a local resident that just got involved, moved my family out to Basking Ridge. I grew up in Westfield, but there's some local artists in town, and we they send me stuff
Yeah.
um, about, hey, did you know?
Right.
And we have a team of volunteers that all we do is raise money for scholarships for kids in the area, and we go out and promote unique stories about history.
Sure.
So she brought this to me a couple of days ago. So I start digging in first just to get comfortable with the story.
Right.
I got to tell you, this is an awesome, awesome story.
Right.
Um, so anyway, thank you for connecting. I thought that that was
Sure.
really fantastic.
No. No problem. Yeah.
First, tell
You
me
are just by coincidence. You're actually my second Deadly Spawn related interview that I'll be having today.
today.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You're the first. I have another one later this afternoon. Yeah.
So
Um,
just tell me about. Well, you want to start there? Just sort of
well,
tell me
yeah.
about that, or
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you know, or so feel free to say I already know that. Move along.
Oh yeah, yeah. No
Yeah,
worries.
the that's actually the real painting.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So my dad was a major in his time, major science fiction and fantasy artist, and he's probably most famous for having done the original movie poster for Star Wars,
Right.
with Skywalker holding up a lightsaber. But he had a long career, in books
All
and
kinds of stuff. I got to tell you.
everything. Yeah, everything. And in about 1979 or 80, he was at a science fiction convention in New Jersey, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And he met with a bunch of folks who later became really close friends, who were startup amateur filmmakers,
Right.
and
Okay.
including some creature effects folks and folks worked in industrial film, but nothing, no fiction yet, and so on. And just by sheer coincidence, a lot of the right people got together at the right time and said, "Hey, let's make a movie." Um, this all happened again. It was all timing related. This was a time when uh, things like prosthetic makeup and mechanical effects technology,
Right.
early 1980s, had advanced to the point now where this was doable if you were skilled enough, by amateur folks, and that's what happened. So um, basically, we raised money from a bunch of dentists.
Really?
Yeah,
I heard the
and
budget was like 100 grand or something
oh
like that.
no, no, 100 grand.
That's what they said. 100 grand.
What are you talking about? 100 grand? Oh my God, no! What we would have killed for 100 grand?
That's
We
funny.
would have made freaking Game of Thrones if we had hundred
There you
grand.
go.
No. So I mean, I think the all in costs ended up being something shy of $30,000 in 1981 dollars. So let's call it
Right. Okay.
60,000 today, at most.
Yeah.
All of that went to straight material third party production costs. So that went to
Oh,
camera
really?
rental and
Okay.
film and editing bay rental, and chiefly, more than half of it went to making the monster.
So I
So
got pictures. I actually have pictures from the Courier News and the Bernardsville News of you and
yeah.
everything. You're 14 years old, right?
So
So
let
I,
me that story is astonishing. Yeah. So and there's an element to this that it's hard to grasp. So this was all filmed. We were living in New Jersey in
yep,
Gladstone
in
at 10
Gladstone, right?
Jackson Avenue, and That's a great house. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a.
I'm going to go over there and just take a look today. I
Yeah.
got to do
Well,
some.
you actually feel free to knock on the door. The guy who currently owns it is actually, I know him,
Oh, really?
and yeah, and he loves showing off the house.
Oh my God! So maybe I'll book a
Book
little
some
more time.
book some time. Yeah, he actually
Okay.
he in fact he's turned one of the rooms into like a little gallery of Hildebrandt art. So
Seriously.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. He's a big fan.
Awesome.
So that was the filming location for 90% of the movie, right? Both
Right.
interiors and exteriors. Not all of it. I'll get to that in a minute. But uh, so I was living there, right? So I was the ideal actor. I'm available on call at all
Right.
times. And I had always, you always had a talent for it. As a kid, I was always, in plays and stuff. So you put all that together, and I was exactly the right age, and it was, I was obviously colossal science fiction and fantasy and horror fan. So no acting required. I was just going to play myself
Great.
essentially in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it took much longer to make than any of us ever thought it would.
Right.
So I think that this was filmed on weekends and at nighttime. Everyone was a volunteer. Everyone was
Right.
no one was paid. The only money that anyone saw wasn't even really money. It was for external stuff like
So
making
everybody
art.
did it for a goof, and
Everyone did it for a goof, and it's the kind of thing, like, this is another reason why I think this film has a new life today. It's the kind of sort of amateur do-it-yourself filmmaking that you see now with web series and all
right.
that, but
Yeah.
we were doing it in 1980.
Uh-huh.
All right, so it took much longer. It took almost 2 years of
2
filming.
years.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to your buddy, who's that? Your roommate or something? Your friend
John,
John?
yeah, John. Well, John's actually my oldest friend in the world. We did live together in grad school. He was my
Okay.
roommate in grad school, but we've actually known each other since first grade.
Oh,
Where
yeah. He
we
said he
both.
know you since you were 6 years old and
That's right.
went through
That's right.
St. E's and
St.
then
E's.
up
Yes.
to
That's right.
Bernard's High School, blah, blah, blah. But
Correct. Correct.
so I did ask him, I thought was really funny. I said, so you guys, he's living in the house, right? The whole time this is going on, what was the deal? And the funniest part was he said, your mother
Yeah.
was probably the funniest because how could she put up with a year, but you're now saying 2 years almost
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of this going on? And
Yeah. Yeah.
just what was it like for that? And what was sort of the neighborhood buzz as it was
Oh yeah,
sort of
no,
going on?
we were neighborhood stars. Now you have to remember that we were unusual neighborhood characters before this because my dad was somewhat
Right.
famous, right? So we were always, kind of doing strange things. But yeah, so there were, I don't know if you've seen the movie recently, but there are a few little crowd scenes and stuff at the end, and those are
Trailers. I'm gonna go in. Yeah, I gotta
go
watch
watch
the
it.
whole
Yeah,
movie. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's all on. You can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw it. I have the link on the piece already that I'm prepping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's you. Another thing that's funny about it is, like, again, at the time its production values were very low. Today, in the world of web series and whatnot, it looks like, oh my God, these guys, how'd they do this?
Right, 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 right.
It's a very
That's
strange thing.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, but one of the stranger making it was crazy, right? So people would pile in on the weekend, right, and we'd have chaos in our house, and then everyone would leave. Or sometimes there'd be a shoot in the middle of the day and at nighttime or something we'd have to
right.
do. But yeah, it was hard. I mean, it was very hard. In retrospect, it's surprising. I was 13 when we started, and I was on a schedule.
Right.
This was my Saturday. This is my Sunday. This is what I'm doing. And so, but I didn't think about it at the time, but the extent to which I did not think about it at the time is rather amazing, because here's what happened. 2 years of production, and then it took, editing was probably another 6 months or more. Paul, the post-production, making music tracks and all of that, getting it
Right.
together. One thing led to another. And again, because of just the right time it was released, we got a theatrical distribution deal. Now, today, a
Right.
movie
Okay.
like this would never be shown in a theater, right? Ludicrous.
Right.
But back then, That's how it worked. We didn't just go direct to video, and almost no one had cable TV. So even tiny films like this got, under the right circumstances, got theatrical distribution deals, and we did. And so now there was a small distributor called 21st Century that
Yeah, tiny one.
fronted the money for advertising and prints and ads and the costs and did it all. Now, couldn't have a national release, right? Because nobody could afford 2,000 prints of this movie in 1981. But they did it regionally. So they started off, in different areas of the country, they would release films, which was not unusual. Even some major Hollywood films are released that way,
Right.
that late. But naturally, it was released first in the greater New York metropolitan area. So this was an astonishing event in one respect. It was released in my sophomore year of high school. And
yeah, God, this is going to be a good story. Go ahead. It's
yeah,
gotta be.
so on my 16th birthday, on April 24th, I walked into a movie theater in Times Square.
Times Square.
Yes, that's where I can. Later, I'll get you. I'll get you more. I can show you photos and everything. Yes, it premiered on Times Square. I walked in and there's my name on the poster. It's The American Dream. I sit down and it's starring Charles George Hildebrandt right up there. People applaud in the theater. Again, The American Dream. Unbelievable. So this is this surreal event. That's just wild, right? But I thought it was fun. Then later that week, it was released in the New York metropolitan area more generally, right? So that, what is it, 4 days later, I was sitting in a theater in Basking Ridge, packed with all of my friends from high school, right? Who were then applauding my name on the screen.
That's amazing. Because I saw the ad.
Yeah.
Where it was distributed. Like, I grew up in Westfield, so I wanted to go down. I would go to the Amboy Cinema.
Right.
And I saw that, and I saw who you were competing against.
Yeah.
It was like Tootsie and
yeah.
Well, anyway. But did you go to the Lions Mall, that Lions Cinema? That's where I think it was showing.
I don't think it was. I don't remember. It was in Basking Ridge. It didn't show.
Okay, yeah, I think that was the only theater in town.
That's it then. That was the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was a wild experience. So here I was, a 16-year-old sophomore in high school, and I had this insane experience of, and I'm on TV, right? I'm on Live at 5.
So what happened? So you go to that movie. Did they know you were there?
Everybody knew I was there.
So you're like the super celebrity.
Well,
local.
Right. So exactly. So, every teenager thinks they're great, right?
Yeah.
I had objective proof.
That's so awesome.
The magnitude of that thing actually, at the time, I think escaped me, and it became later in life. I looked back on it and thinking, and at the time, I guess I thought it was great and I loved it, but I didn't realize how strange it was at the time at all. I didn't realize how.
It's in the moment, right? You just don't
in the moment,
realize.
And I guess in the back of my
not
mouth,
mindful of it.
No, I wasn't. I was like, everybody gets to be in a movie with it. Yeah. It's like, whatever. But no. So that happened. So that was fun. It was a blast. I mean, nothing quite like that, as you can imagine. And it had a weird effect on me too later, because I was good at acting, right? And I was in all high school plays and whatnot, and I was in drama club in college and so on. But then every time I would do a show, everybody else around me, like especially in college, right? These were dedicated professional folks who were on the track to become real actors, right? They were desperate. They were desperate for what I had done at age 16.
Right.
That was their dream, that someday they were going to be a movie in Times Square. And I was like, well, I'd already done this.
So you were doing stuff. You were doing stuff at Bernard's High, and then I heard that I was laughing. You went to Rutgers, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And did you continue sort of doing this at Rutgers, or
a little bit, right? But this was a lesson to me. What I learned at Rutgers was that I wasn't like most of the other folks who did acting. So for instance, I remember being in a play once. They did a production, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right?
Okay.
And I was Ford Prefect, for typecasting, and it was great. And I had a great time. I loved The Hitchhiker's Guide, science fiction, right on my alley. And then the next, right after that, everybody's reaction was, "Oh, Charles is so good at this. It's wonderful. We want to do. Please come to our next show. We're going to do. We want you to audition for." It was like some Neil Simon thing. And I was like, "What's that got to do with science fiction?"
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. It's boring.
Right.
And I realized at that moment that like I'm not an actor in that sense, right? Like I love acting, it's fun, but I don't need to do it.
But you have a genre you want to.
Yeah, I'm interested in
You're
acting when I care about the story. I'm not particularly interested in it just for the sake of acting.
Right.
So it was in it. Well, I learned something about myself, right? So there you go. That's what happened.
So if you're in a genre, you like that genre and stuff. Just a quick question: what do you think is So what were your favorite? I'm trying to think. What were your favorite, or what's your favorite kind of movie? Is it like this? Was it Alien? Was it because Alien had just come out, right?
Yes, Alien had just come out. I'm a colossal fan of Alien.
I figured because I saw a little bit of that in there.
Oh yeah, no. Alien is huge impact. I'm a colossal fan. No, I was a lifetime. I think the difference between me and the Charles character in the movie is that the Charles character in the movie is a general fan of horror films. He loves science fiction, but he also loves like horror films generally. I'm the reverse. I'm more of a generally science fiction, but I also like horror movies. But yeah, no, Alien is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Got it.
Yeah, absolutely. But and again, my parents were science fiction fans, so I grew up with all of this stuff. From 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and the 1953 War of the Worlds to Logan's Run and
right.
Absolutely everything. So and that's been true my whole life.
So why did this? I saw that this happened, and it's funny. I looked at sort of the timeline of your father, and I guess it's your uncle, right?
Right. He didn't have anything to do with the Deadly Spawn, though.
No, he didn't have anything to do with that. But wasn't this sort of the first post Brothers big thing that he did? Wasn't that a diversion from what he typically was doing? He'd never done.
Well, no. So this is a weird thing. I mean, this is not something you would know from the public record. But my dad, while he was this wildly successful and famous artist for being a painter, that wasn't his first love.
He wanted to be a film guy.
Yeah,
he did.
That's what he really wanted to do, and and his whole life he kind of thought this was going to be his entree into becoming a movie producer director. So no, he had done lots of others. He had executive produced and created a TV commercial for 3M years before, and even before that, he had made documentary movies and whatnot. This was always his dream of really doing that. So it's odd, but that everybody has a whatever secret project, I guess you could call it.
But why I didn't even ask the question. Why Gladstone? Do you know why? They were living in the city or something, or where were they living?
My parents were living in Jersey City in an apartment. They met in New York, and then they were living in Jersey City, and they just they got married and started a family, and they were looking for a house. They both loved historical stuff, so they loved the idea of living in a Victorian house.
Right.
But the requirement was that it had to be something easily accessible to New York City, and of course Gladstone's right on the end of the Gladstone line train. Yeah. So that's put those two together, and it's unthinkable today, but at the time it was very cheap. It was an affordable place.
Yeah.
It's 1968. Hard to believe that, but it was true, and that's why.
Well, growing up, think about this, me being the historian, it's kind of funny because that is exactly why, if in the area, that's also where the Blairsden estate was.
Oh, yeah, no.
And Natterer was. And the whole justification that I learned from locals and historians was the rich also the whole reason why this place really kicked off in the 1870s, 1890s
Yeah.
was because the rich would go to the farthest end of the
Yes.
train,
Yes.
and then they'd
Yes.
buy up all the property.
And they buy up all the properties. That's right. So what's funny is you talk about Blairston and
Because that was going to be my next foray. I was going to
yeah,
go, you had to enjoy the
yeah.
whole nun
Well, yeah.
stuff,
What
right?
yeah, oh, absolutely. And like, well, what's called now Necherar, but was the Kate Macy Ladd estate,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
for when I was growing up, that behind that, right? If you're driving around the road and you look up like Necherar, you can see there's mountains and there are or hills and this forested all behind there, and there's
Yeah.
Lake Road is back there and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, as kids, we always used to run around back in that's the woods I played in as a kid.
Right.
It was behind there. Going up to the gates of Blairston and sneaking into the Kate Macy Ladd
Yeah. Yeah.
estate.
But then you must know, you've got to know do you know the stories or probably the involvement of the whole right up off Matheny Road, the whole Jacob's Ladder and the
Oh yeah,
devil's,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
devil's
Drive up. I learned to
tomb and
drive
all
up.
that?
Yeah, I learned to drive going up Jacob's Ladder. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Because I did pieces about that as well, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting to the lore of it. For example, as a historian, I just went over. My wife's grandmother stayed at Kate Macy Ladd, so we have pictures of her as kids going there and seeing her and everything. So
Wow.
it's funny how it sort of all starts to tie together in
Yeah.
your journey. And as I'm doing these sort of history pieces, it's really interesting to tie back, well, who lived where and what did they do? And they called that, where I just did a piece about Jackie Kennedy, because Jackie
Yeah.
Kennedy
So
was living back in there.
yes.
Right?
So I actually, there used to be a little drugstore in downtown Gladstone.
Yeah.
Downtown Gladstone,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, exactly.
on the one road there, right by
Yeah,
the
on Main Street there.
Main Street, yeah, right
Yeah.
by there. So there used to be a little drugstore, and there was a day when when you walked into the drugstore, immediately to the left there was the rack where the where comic books were.
Oh, right.
And there was a day where I was in the drugstore. I don't remember where my mom or dad was at that moment. I think they had just gone next door to the next store, which was a deli.
Yeah,
And
it was the Copper Kettle Deli.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but
yeah.
I was looking through the comic books in that blowing down, and then I turned around, and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was walking out of the drugstore wearing
Right.
her riding outfit with her boots and the
Yeah.
black helmet.
Yeah. And you just you probably see a bunch of guys wearing, dark
big dark side of
sunglasses,
exists, right? Well,
suits.
no, not in the store, right?
Right.
But she was on a horse. She had brought her. That was her thing. She was so
Seriously.
yeah. She had. I guess. So she walked out, and I couldn't really see, but there was a horse. I assume there was her and her buddy or whatever, and they had like parked their horses outside.
Seriously.
Yeah. And when I was growing up, the equestrian team was headquartered there, and
Right.
and rich people love horses. So
Yeah.
there was much horsery happening in Gladstone.
Oh, it's a huge area for it,
Yeah,
even,
yeah,
not so much today, but
it
Bedminster
was.
really took over
Yeah,
for it. But this was part of that area, actually.
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it was originally part of Bedminster.
yeah.
So
That's right.
I knew that. So I've met some guys locally that were telling me that rented, for example, the house to her, and they were referring to things like, they call it this the valley and this the that. It was funny, things that I'd never really heard before,
Right.
about just that area in general, because you're right, it is really as Norman Rockwell, quiet, easygoing,
Yeah.
and very private to some degree. So I'm thinking about just sort of this circus you guys are sort of putting on, where I read a story about
Yeah.
neighbors coming by and seeing blood and guts and corpses on the front lawn,
Yes. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
those
Fake
things, and
corpses.
they're just looking by like, Oh yeah, that's Tim and his family doing
That's essentially
thing.
right. That's essentially right. Although there were lots of cars that would drive by when we were shooting outside, for instance, and slow down and look.
Right.
But a lot of the like our immediate neighbors, some of them showed up in the movie as extras.
Right.
And again, when you see it, you'll see the at the end the Gladstone cops and the Gladstone
Oh,
Fire and
really?
Rescue
Okay.
Squad actually show up in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you get the extras to do that? I saw a whole list of extras, and that's where
Yeah.
someone had said to me, they said, "Hey, these sound like there's a bunch of Burnersville guys in
Yeah.
here." Is
Yeah.
that, or are those like kids from
They're just-
school, or
yeah.
just
So they were
how
just
did you put
friends.
the word out, or is it just word of mouth?
Literally asking people, hey,
Okay.
we need you to be in the movie. You want to come over? Okay.
Wow.
That's all it was, right? No internet, so that's the only way to do it, right?
So you never pursued, I heard that, John had said that you were really good, very artistic, but he said you love to argue more.
Yeah, it's about right.
so
That's about
so
right.
is that
My real passion is
you
arguing
didn't
with
go to
people.
that school that your dad was teaching at up in Dover, right?
No,
You
no.
said, no, I'm going this way.
That's right. So I have gone into the field in an indirect way. So I am an arts and entertainment lawyer.
Got it.
Uh,
Okay.
so I do copyright and trademark, and I negotiate deals for artists and writers and musicians and television productions and games and all of that. And so so you could say I went into the field, but yeah,
So you
no,
have an affinity though for it, for playing in the
yeah.
space, so to speak, right?
So the what I learned, this kind of goes back to what I was saying about acting. To be successful as an artist, right? So which is very difficult in
I
this
hear the struggles. Yeah, I know a few friends that have
right. It's very difficult
struggled.
because there are no barriers to entry, right? There's no bar exam
Good
limiting
point.
the
Yeah.
supply. Anyone can do it. So the competition is ferocious. The prices drop to zero because okay, I'll do this. Yes, I'll illustrate your game for $500. Oh, well, I'll do it for 450. Um, the the result of that is a ferocious competition where really excellent people can thrive and succeed. But in order to be successful, you must be driven to the point and motivated by the process. And I will give you some examples. My dad, as you can see, was an incredibly talented artist. And he would rather be painting a monster or a dragon or a spaceship or something like that. But he could also be just as excited about painting an advertisement for cat food.
Right.
Or a portrait of somebody for a whatever, or the picture of a tree. He was so excited and interested in the process of it, the technical creation of it, that is what motivated him. And the same is true of people who are in acting, for instance. They don't care what they're in. They can be in. They don't need to be in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They're perfectly happy doing a Neil Simon play because they care about acting. That's not me. So I like art a lot.
That's not me.
Yeah, it's not me. But I'm not gonna paint a can of cat food. I'm not interested in that at all.
Right.
So so I don't have the need, unfortunately, to do that. Or maybe fortunately, I'm not sure.
So why did you guys move to Texas?
Oh, I didn't. So
you didn't.
No, I live in the Washington D.C. area.
No. I'm saying after you left Gladstone, I heard there was a stint. He went to Texas. Did
my
the whole
mom?
family?
Yeah, so that's right. My mom was from Texas. My mom grew up here in San. I'm actually visiting her right now.
Oh wow! Okay.
I mean, I'm calling you from Texas. Yeah, she grew up here in San Antonio, and yeah, that's what happened. So to be with family, they were getting older and everything, and so they ended up moving out, and they left New Jersey and came down here.
So he went back to New Brunswick, or did the family? There was there was this story, and this is why it's great.
Oh, he was video. You mean he was?
You
Yeah.
you
He was
never
visiting.
understand what's going on. Did
Right.
he
He
move from-
died. He did die in New Jersey. I think that's what you're getting confused about.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah, he did die in New Jersey because he actually had come back on a visit, visiting. He was staying with John Dodds, who was uh, the ironically the special effects director and guy.
That's how. Okay. So someone had said, find John Dodd, talk to
Yeah,
him.
absolutely.
Right.
John lives in, and John and I are good friends. We've been friends the whole time. I actually just talked to him last week. He lives in New Brunswick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's visiting New Brunswick. No, they lived in. So they moved to Texas for a while, and then so my mom.
Okay, so
still
he
lives
comes up, but then you had so he dies from complication of diabetes. Now, that's what
Not
I read.
exactly. Not exactly. So he died of a staph infection, actually.
Okay.
Which is a terrible story, but and it was caused by he had he was admitted to the hospital because of complications from diabetes.
Right.
He was, when he.
No, I'm a diabetic, so I
Oh,
kind of.
okay, right. So lots of things can make you shaky and whatnot, and
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and so he had to be admitted, but then from an IV in the hospital, he
Oh,
contracted a
God.
staph
Seriously.
infection. Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
it was very sad.
So I did ask the question, though. So I read about the service that was in Gladstone,
Hmm.
but I never saw. Was he cremated? Was he
Yeah,
buried?
yeah.
Where's his tombstone?
No, there is none.
There is none.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No, no such thing here. No
Okay.
such thing here.
So that's that. So I'm curious though about also just the relationship that I've read about between him and his brother.
Hmm.
And I heard that there was this, go out on your own 12 years and
Hmm.
then there's this meeting I read about on the green in Morristown that Greg writes about and says, I'm assuming, well, here's Tim living in Gladstone. He's living up in a PACCON. Find a neutral spot.
Yeah.
12 years later, they go to the green. And what? Do you know anything about that? Or
Yeah,
what's sort of the
it's
synopsis?
reconciliation. Yeah, that's essentially right. They did a reconciliation, and that's really about it. Then after that, many years passed, but then after that, they did work together again, off and on, for a number of years, from
Mm-hmm.
about 90. I want to say 94.
Probably would be.
Yeah.
Fits into my research. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So, if you had to pick something or a couple of things that were like your favorites of your dad's, what drawings, comic books, anything?
Hold on.
What is it?
I'll show you one.
All right. Got to get the drum roll.
So now I'm a big Tolkien fan, and I love the work he did on The Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
And of course, and I'm a Star Wars fan, and I love the work that he did on Star Wars. And obviously I love the Deadly Spawn poster. And he
Sure.
did so many amazing things. I believe the most beautiful painting he ever made is this one.
I can't wait.
So this is probably not going to come across on Zoom.
No, it's coming. It's there.
Okay. So this is a painting from a Dungeons and Dragons calendar from 1983, and I will email you a nicer photo of it.
It's so funny because I never hooked into that genre, but it was such, it's in my childhood as well as it was such a big deal.
Yeah, no, it's fantasy. Fantasy
in the 80s.
Yeah, that painting is from a 1983 calendar.
Right.
That's obviously, in the 1980s it was kind of a niche thing. Now it's huge. I mean, with the it's much bigger. It's utterly mainstream. The most successful television show
Yeah.
history is Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And if
Exactly.
you had told me in 1983 that, America and the world would be glued to a hardcore sword and sorcery television series as the cultural touchstone, I would never have believed it. I was certainly in a minority at the time, but yeah, it's gotten bigger and bigger. So that's probably, if you by
That's
coincidence, I would
amazing.
say that would
Yeah,
be the
that's awesome.
yeah.
Now, let me ask you this though: do you thinking? I'm just sort of thought about this. I got a kid of mine lives upstairs. He's now uh, in his 20s.
Hmm.
But the kid's genre today with the video games.
Hmm.
Would that have
Absolutely.
been something he would have explored? Like
So I
just the
was
art and the technology and the
Yeah, so
would
I was a very early adopter of computers and myself
yeah,
and video games. I was I had a computer in 1981, and when it was truly a niche hobby. I remember in when I was in high school, I literally knew everyone in the high school who owned a computer. That's how few people they were. I could
right.
name them. We were all friends because this was something
That's
that
funny.
only yeah, they were
Yeah,
fantastically expensive and truly a niche hobby. So I was a very early adopter of video games. My dad, while he absolutely appreciated the artistry of video games,
right.
he was not a gamer. He didn't.
No, you have to. Yeah,
You're either. I think it's a personality type you're born with.
yeah.
It is. You are either, and I am right. I love it, and but he
What's
was
your
not.
game of choice today?
Well, I
You
love all
have one?
games. I'm actually even more than computer games. I'm a board game, war game, role playing games like
Oh,
Dungeons and
right.
Dragons,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing.
Okay,
Big, complicated. All of my friends are. My wife is. All of our friends are.
that's funny.
This actually goes hand in hand with being a lawyer. My wife is also a lawyer, and I generally just about all of our friends are lawyers who are also gamers. It's a it's a
Okay.
crossover. And theater people. I actually met my wife doing community theater. You can imagine. But in terms of modern video games, I mean, the ones you probably heard of, The Witcher is amazing,
Yeah,
and Witcher 3 in particular. I love Assassin's Creed, particularly the
yeah.
most recent one,
Which is
Assassin's
funny
Creed.
because, like you just said, those two, aren't they? They're now Netflix series,
They're
right?
now Netflix series. Yeah, they're.
Yeah.
I think increasingly. So in the 1970s and 80s, I think movies were the cultural currency. Certainly, what I grew up with. You talk to other people about movies. You quote movies.
Mm.
That's the cultural references that we make to each other. I think before that, obviously, people talked about literature or whatnot, but and now that's what it is. I think that has shifted.
Oh,
That people.
that's my dog.
Hey, puppy. Oh no, it's fine.
Gambit,
Um,
watch out.
what kind of dog do you have?
That's a black lab. Her name is
Oh, the
Her
classic
name is Gambit.
Gambit. All right, awesome. There you go.
There you
Speaking of
go.
comics,
There you go.
so no, I think today increasingly movies don't take that space among people or 20s and younger. I think that it's now occupied entirely by television, long form television, like Game of Thrones and The Witcher or whatnot,
Right.
and video games. I think video games are now filling that cultural space. People talk about, oh, you remember that part in Alien Isolation where we did X, Y, and Z,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
you remember that part in Assassin's
Or
Creed
they
Odyssey.
want my son actually he goes and they have this Twitch network and they go
Yeah,
on to Twitch and they just
yeah,
watch guys
yeah,
play. He was up to like 4 a.m. watching these,
yeah.
South Koreans going
I
wild
know, I know.
over some
It's a
game.
little bit like the Olympics because they're doing something that you do yourself, right?
Yeah.
But they're way better than you.
And they'll pack 20,000 people in a stadium to do it.
Yeah, it's like watching the
Insane.
Olympics. Yeah,
So it
it's like,
is
like
modern entertainment with
yeah.
art
Well, again,
form, with
I
an
think it's
interesting art form.
with an art form. It's very artistic. Yeah, I think it's like watching the Olympics. I mean, if you, I don't know if you ski or not, but I
Mm.
ski. I'm terrible, but I love doing it. And it's just fun, right? But I really like watching the Winter Olympics because, like, wow, those guys can
Wow, look
really
at how it's
ski.
really done.
Look, yeah, look how it's really done. Oh shit, I can't do that. You know.
That's so funny.
So I think that's what Twitch is like. You okay? I play Assassin's Creed, but now watch this guy play Assassin's Creed. Also, I think the difference is you can learn something, right?
Sure.
You
They
know, like,
learn the
oh, I
tricks.
never thought of doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'm going to throw the torch at that wall. Excellent. Now I'm going to do
Yeah.
everything from that play. So,
Hey. All
yeah.
right. Hey, they're telling me that's probably telling me to end, but I got one more
Sure.
question here. Let me
Sure.
get away from these guys here. I'll ask you. So, I just want to know if one last question. Do you
Sure.
know they have that? Have you ever seen that Bernard's High Hall of Fame?
I didn't know there was a Berners Eye Hall of Fame.
Oh, yes, there is.
Really?
So my question to you is, again, it's the interesting thing is doing the history is, and I've done a bunch of it for Burnersville,
Yeah.
is, you've got the Meryl Streep story.
Yeah.
And that led me to the Jay Giles story.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Didn't know he was from Berners High.
Yeah.
And it's led me down the road, and it's now landed me here with you. So what year did you graduate?
85.
85. So that's amazing. So again, I'm thinking
I need to be there.
once this piece gets together,
Absolutely.
I may have to reach out to some of the nominating committee and say,
I think
remember
there's a grave
Charles here? I think
absolutely. There's a
you
grave
need to
injustice.
bring him
I'm
up.
not there.
Absolutely.
Also, it's a double injustice because Meryl Streep was just a cheerleader at Bernard's High. She didn't become a famous actor until later.
True.
I was a famous actor at Bernard's High.
True. Well, all right. I'm gonna run, but because I've gone way even longer than I should have. But
It's
thank
fine.
you very much
I
for
will
this.
send
This
you,
was great.
and it's fine. Can you just Facebook me your preferred email address? I will send you. I have some stuff you'd like to read. I've got
Sure.
newspaper
If you want to
articles
send it to me, and again, one of the things
Yeah.
you being in the area and everything growing up
Yeah.
is this project, this nonprofit. It's called the Mr. Local History Project.
Yeah, I see your Facebook page. Sure.
Yeah, that's our Facebook. We have a website. But again, we are doing things, like I said, more social fun ways to
Yeah.
promote all different aspects. It's not just all about the Revolutionary War or, the 1800s. I'm looking at the 60s, 70s, 80s, things that, again, it's really interesting because historical societies, they're not covering it. They don't.
No.
To them, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. But history is history. And
Right.
I'm finding in this area, there is just so much of it that's
Steeped in
eclectic
it.
as well as, traditional.
Can I ask you a question? How did
Sure.
you end up? How did you end up moving to Somerset County?
It's pretty funny story. So I was, born and raised in Westfield and Cranford.
Right.
And Union County, and
Yeah.
I used to have cousins that lived in Warren, right here. And we used to, as growing up, we used to curse that we would have to go out there with the chickens and the above ground pool and
the above ground pool.
my uncle was from like Tennessee, so he was like a good old boy hunter.
Wow.
And fisherman and all that, and he would have all these critters in his backyard. And
wow.
Then we would stop over to this place called Dewey Meadow and get Dewey Meadow chicken pot pies. His kid, it was a chicken farm. Finally,
probably pretty good.
It was very good.
Yeah.
The farm is gone, but the pies actually still exist.
Yeah.
But then my sister-in-law moved out here from Springfield, and she called up and told us. We were living in Springfield at the time, said, you got to come check this place out. And we're like, well, why? One is cheaper than Union County.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
It was.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. Okay.
And now, the catch line for us to come out here was, you got to understand, my kids are going to school now in the local school. And when those kids come over to our house, they always say, hello, Mrs. Von Bargen. How are you today? Hello,
yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. She said the manners were just blew her away.
Yeah.
And then she said the only other thing is, if you knew the area and you ever had to go down to Route 22, when Route 22, there was this defining moment when you went into chaos we refer
Yes.
to it.
Yes.
And it's always been when you cross Berkeley Heights and go into Union County,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
the chaos begins. But
Yeah.
once you get west of there, it's like serenity.
It's serenity.
You know?
That's true. It's a border. Yeah.
And
that's
we
a good
finally
point.
moved out here, and I've lived in maybe 3 different places in the 15 years or 20 years we've lived here. And I've gone the buy a house just to buy a house.
Sure.
And it was buy a house because I can get 4 or 5 acres of land and play and be serene.
Yeah.
And then my wife finally realized, after having 3 kids in 3 different schools, she was commuting like 25, 30 miles a day.
It's horrible.
Just to bring the kids back and forth in a 25 square mile town, which you would have known this, because what do? You gotta get on a bus and go from Gladstone to Bernards High?
No. So I had the most I hope they still do this. It was amazing. So what they did for me, all right, the way I got to high school was on the train. They gave us rail passes. I walked from my house to the train station and walked from the train station. It was so great because no bus schedule to worry about. If I had to stay late or wanted to do something else or hang out with my friends, could take any train. It was
But then
great.
you lost your buddy because he went off to Del Barton, I heard.
He did. But you know who he went to high school with, who was there with him? It all comes to a circle. Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Right.
Gee,
have you guys ever connected? Have you ever connected with him?
John has not. No, I actually still hung
forgot
out with
about
John.
That. That's another.
John lived walking distance to the Bernardsville train station, it was not a problem at all. Yeah.
Very good. Well, hey Charles, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
This was awesome. I'll drop you. I'll do it in the chat. I'll send you over. My contact details. If you have anything cool or interesting that you'd like to send over, love to do it. And I'm going to put together a piece and love to hear what you think about it.
Sounds wonderful.
Hey, awesome.
Great meeting you.
Great meeting you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.